Let's talk ice cream. I love ice cream, and so today we're going to talk a little bit about the chemistry of making ice cream and a little bit of the physics behind making ice cream, too. We got lots of different things that we're going to cover today, so let's get to those secrets. First off, I want to look at what happens when water freezes. And so I have a picture here of lots of little water droplets. And as things get colder and colder and colder, some of those droplets start to form ice crystals. That hexagonal shape there is an ice crystal. And as the water continues to freeze, the little droplets of water cluster around that ice crystal, and the ice crystal grows bigger and bigger and bigger. And then finally, you're left with just a couple of enormous ice crystals. All right, so that's thinking about how water normally freezes. When we make ice cream, we need to change the way that water freezes. The secret to making good ice cream is to get really, really, really tiny ice crystals. And in this picture here, I have two huge ice crystals. And if you make ice cream with big ice crystals, your ice cream is going to be crunchy. That's not what we want out of ice cream. We want small ice crystals. And so we're going to talk about several tricks that you can use to make really creamy ice cream with small ice crystals. We're going to control the way that water freezes. Okay, so our first option is to freeze water really fast. We're going to freeze our water really fast. So if we use something like liquid nitrogen, we can freeze those water molecules in place right where they are. And once they're frozen, they're not going to get any bigger. All right, so that's one option that we have, is to freeze things really fast, to use some physics to help freeze our water really quickly. The second thing that we can do is we can use some chemical additives to slow down water motion so that the water droplets can't reach up to one another while they are freezing. So we want to prevent water motion, and we have a couple of types of molecules at our disposal to do that. In my class, we talked a lot about hydrocolloids, and so there are several different kinds of hydrocolloids that we can use to slow down water motion, so that when our ice cream freezes, we get really tiny ice crystals and really smooth ice cream. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of different recipes that use different kinds of hydrocolloids, different kinds of thickening agents to slow down water motion and to control the way our water freezes. This first ice cream recipe is from David Lebovitz. This is probably my favorite ice cream recipe. This is what I base most of the ice creams I make off of. In this recipe, he uses 2 cups of heavy cream, a cup of whole milk, 5 egg yolks, 3/4 cup of sugar, and vanilla to taste. So in this recipe, we're using egg yolks to thicken our ice cream base. Okay, those egg yolks make a custard, and that custard you can see sort of wraps around the water droplets or the water ice crystals as they are forming. Okay, and so we use that custard. We use the proteins from our custard, the proteins from our eggs, to slow the water molecules down. Another type of molecule that we can use is xanthan gum. Xanthan gum is a hydrocolloid, and when you add water to xanthan gum, it expands. It gets really big. It soaks up water like a sponge, and when it does that, it crowds out all of the other water molecules, and so you have this huge sponge-like thing floating around in your ice cream base, and so that's going to help slow down our water molecules. It's going to thicken up our base. This recipe that I'm showing here is from Salt and Straw. Those of you on the West Coast probably have heard or have gone to Salt and Straw before. It's a fantastic ice cream parlor. And I got this recipe book from my brother Tom and sister-in-law Adrian, and so I use this one a lot too. But this is great because this is a vegan ice cream base, and we're going to use coconut ice cream here. And our thickening, again, like I said before, is xanthan gum. All right, so xanthan gum is something that you might have to order special online, but probably not. They sell it at my grocery store near all of the baking supplies, flour and sugar and all of that stuff. So you can probably find it at your grocery store as well. but we're going to use xanthan gum to thicken here, right? So again, the point of all of this is to find ways to slow water molecules down so we can control how our ice cream freezes. Okay, so just comparing these two recipes here, our custard ice cream base and our vegan ice cream base. All right, the first part of this in both of them is that we have our base, right? Our cream, where we get all the fat from in our ice cream. That fat is fantastic. We want to make sure that whenever we make any sort of ice cream, that it's got a good amount of fat in it. I'm going through this analysis just because I really like to change recipes. And whenever I do, I kind of look at what is in those recipes, what makes it tick, right? So I can kind of figure out, well, where do I have freedom to change things? And if I change one ingredient, how do I have to change the others? Okay, so this first part, right, we've got our fats that we have and also our water. The water is really important for making ice cream too, right? So our base, our creaminess, our fat is going to come from either the heavy cream or the coconut milk in this case. What I want to stress with the coconut milk is that you get a very high fat coconut milk. That is really important, that you get a high fat coconut milk. You can go through and do calculations to figure out from each of these recipes what mass of fat is in your heavy cream or whole milk or coconut milk. We want really high amounts of fat in our final ice cream that we make. So do pay attention to that if you're going to change these. All right, the next part that we've got that we're going to look at is our thickeners. For our custard ice cream base, our egg yolks are our thickeners. For our vegan ice cream base, our xanthan gum that we're using is our thickener. And we have lots of different other hydrocolloids that we could use here as well, but in this one we're using xanthan gum. Okay. Next, we're going to look at the sweetness and some of the flavor that we're getting. In the recipe on the left, we're just using 3/4 cup of granulated sugar for our sweetener. On the right, with the vegan ice cream, we're using a couple different kinds of sweeteners. We've got some brown sugar, we've got some syrup, some corn syrup, and we've got some granulated sugar as well. All right, and so all of those are going to add different sorts of flavors and different amounts of sweetness as well. The sugar is really important because it is going to have a huge effect on the frozen texture of the ice cream. Once the ice cream is frozen, all of that sugar is going to help keep it soft. It's going to lower the freezing point of our ice cream, and so it's going to help keep that ice cream soft. Whenever I teach this class, one of the questions people always ask me is, what's the biggest difference between ice cream and gelato? And so there aren't a whole lot of differences between the way you make ice cream and the way you make gelato. The biggest difference is the temperature at which you serve them. Gelato is served at a higher temperature, and because it's served at a higher temperature, you don't need to add as much sugar to it. That sugar helps to keep the ice cream soft at a lower temperature. And so if you're serving at a higher temperature like you do with gelato, you don't need to add as much sugar. So that's the biggest difference that you can use if you're serving gelato versus ice cream. All right, the final thing that we have here is extra flavorings that you're adding. For our custard ice cream base, we're adding some vanilla. And for the vegan ice cream base that I'm going to go through and make in just a moment here, we have some toasted coconut. And let me tell you, toasted coconut adds a ton of flavor to this. It's just amazing. Okay, so let's go through and make the vegan ice cream base from salt and straw and talk about the different parts here. All right, so we're going to start off, and I'm going to take some coconut. I'm going to bake it in an oven at about 350, and we're going to get this nice brown, crispy, shredded coconut. And this is phenomenal. It's great to go into the base because it adds all sorts of flavor to the ice cream base, but we can also save some of it to garnish the top of our ice cream too. It's amazing. Okay, so going through with this recipe. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add all of my dry ingredients together, right? So I've got some sugar that I'm going to add. We're going to add some granulated, so there's some brown sugar. I'm going to add a little bit more of that. All right, there's some more brown sugar. I'm getting all that I need. And the next thing I'm going to add is my granulated sugar. So here comes my granulated sugar. And then finally, what I'm going to add after that granulated sugar is my xanthan gum. All right, so here comes the xanthan gum in just a second here. All right, once I get all of those added, what I'm going to do is I am going to whisk those together really well. I'm going to whisk them together really well. And the big reason I'm doing that is if I just took the xanthan gum and added it all at once, it would clump together. And that would really affect our ice cream the ice cream base as we're making it, right? We want that xanthan to stay spread out from one another as we're adding it to our liquid and getting it to dissolve into water and expand. Okay, so that's a really important thing to do here. Okay, so really mix it well, right? And that's going to save you a lot of trouble later with having no clumps. You'll see in a minute that I do get some clumps just from my brown sugar that I'm using. All right, so let's go ahead. Now we're going to add this to some water. There's some water that I'm adding, and all right. So there's my water. I've started to add my water. Now I'm slowly adding my solid, so my sugar and my xanthan gum, and I'm getting it all mixed in. So that it's nice and even. One of the reasons why I add extra water to this recipe, and the recipe itself calls for that, right, from the Salt and Straw Cookbook, is that I want to get the amount of fats to total liquid proportional with what I would expect for an ice cream recipe. So we add a little bit of water to help with that. You can see here I've also added a little bit of light maple or light corn syrup, and so now I'm just mixing it all up, and I'm going to let it dissolve. I'm going to come back and let it heat up for a while and go. You see, I'm kind of trying to get rid of some of those brown sugar clumps here as we go too. Right, but it's really important to get everything all mixed up, all even, all dissolved here. Okay, we'll watch this as we go for just a little bit more. Mix it up some more. Again, just getting everything to dissolve. We're about there. There it is. Get out those last little clumps. Some of that brown sugar just wasn't going in. So I took some of that out, and then we'll be ready to go, right? So again, get this all dissolved. And once that's all heated up, right? Once that's all heated up and nice and warm, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bunch of my shredded coconut to that. I'm going to leave some for garnishing, but I want that shredded coconut to steep in the liquid that I've made, just so it takes in some of that great toasted coconut flavor. All right, so now that I've got some of my base liquid ready, my water and sugars, I've made a big syrup here, and my thickening xanthan gum, now I'm going to add my coconut cream to it, or my coconut milk, right? So my high-fat coconut cream. So I'm just going to add it. I'm going to get it all mixed up, all right, all evenly mixed, and then I'm going to put it in the fridge. And I'm going to let it sit in the fridge for a couple of reasons. One, when I throw it into the ice cream maker in a little bit, I want the temperature to be cold enough so that when we start, it's good. But also, aging your ice cream base helps with flavor as well. All right, so here we go. Mix it up a little bit. All right, and then off to the fridge it goes. One of the things that I want to mention here, too, is I'm going to use an ice cream maker to make this. You don't need an ice cream maker to make ice cream. There are loads of examples online with people using plastic bags and ice and salt, right? So you get a big plastic bag with salt and ice in it. You put a little plastic bag with your ice cream base in it, and you get it all mixed up. So you don't need a fancy ice cream maker to do this. The ice and salt trick works really well. Okay, so now I'm going to add my ice cream base to my ice cream maker. You can see how sludgy this is, right? Look how sludgy it is. That is the thickening that our xanthan gum has done, all right? It's almost as thick as a pudding. Not quite, right? Almost as thick as a pudding, but that is just a it shows how much the xanthan slows down the water motion, right? We get a very thick ice cream base here, right? Even before it goes into the ice cream maker. And when you're making eggs, you're looking for something similar, right? You're making a custard, so you want to slow those molecules down. You want to slow your base down. You want to thicken it up a lot. Okay, so we're gonna go through a couple churns here, a couple shows of our churns. This is where we've just added it, and you can see it's got one texture. In just a minute, we'll speed up some time. We'll go to our next little bit of time, and watch. Up now we've changed times here. Here's the ice cream after a little bit more time, and you can see it's starting to thicken up a little bit more, starting to cool down a little bit more. All right. One more go here. We'll see it thickening up even more. There it is, even thicker. You can really see it's starting to solidify. You can see chunks of ice cream being made. All right, and so all in all, this takes about a half an hour in the ice cream machine. When you are using the plastic bag method with the ice and the salt to make your ice cream, that takes about 10 minutes. And so you do a single serving at a time. Here I'm doing tons of servings, right? I've got about 4 cups of ice cream base in here. So it takes a little while longer. If you're going to do a single serving at a time, it takes about 10 minutes of squishing up your ice and salt in your ice cream base. All right, so after I was all done, I took my ice cream and I put it in the fridge, or in the freezer, and let it set up. That's a really important part too. All right, here's a picture of my finished product with a little bit of the toasted coconut sprinkled on top. All right, that's what I got for today. Hope everyone is well. If you want to make some ice cream at home, I highly recommend it. I love making ice cream. It's a great way to have a nice little treat at home. And like I said, if you understand a little bit of this, you can make a single serving of ice cream at a time if you really want to. And it's a nice little treat to be able to have for yourself. So if you have any questions or comments, you know how to reach me. I can't highly enough recommend both of these books, the Salt and Straw book and David Leibovitz's The Perfect Scoop book. I hope you're all well, and I will see you soon. Bye.